And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious episode of Doing the Work, the first show on the Back Home Network covering IU women's basketball. This is our 110th episode, recorded on Thursday, February 29th, 2024. I'll be your host this evening, Jeff Marlow. My co-host, Kathy Amos, is back from vacation, but she's under the weather tonight. So you get just me here on the podcast tonight, and hope you enjoy the ride. I'm here to break down your number 14/12 Indiana Hoosiers 84-64 win over the Northwestern Wildcats on Tuesday evening. That victory brings their record to 23-4 overall, 14-3 in the Big Ten. And as usual, we'll start this broadcast as we do with every broadcast, with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And I'm going to go back to the very first bucket that Mackenzie Holmes had on Tuesday evening. Mackenzie Holmes' first basket gave her 2,349 points, passing Steve Alford to move into second place all time on the Indiana scoring list. She now only trails Calvert Cheney on that list. So congratulations, Mackenzie, as you keep moving up the list of all-time greats at Indiana. And our banner moment is brought to you by Home Field Apparel, presenting sponsor of the Back Home Network, which includes Assembly Call and Crimson Cast. Home Field is constantly releasing new schools or updating their products for schools in their existing line. You're bound to find something for you or anyone in your life that just loves great collegiate gear. And if you haven't seen, they've also dropped some NASCAR gear, some Hendrick Motorsport gear as well. So you don't necessarily have to be into college sports. If you like some NASCAR, some Hendrick, you can find it there as well. Not only do you get quality apparel, but you are supporting an Indiana-based business that has its roots in the Kelley School of Business. So go to homefieldapparel.com and use our promo code HOME. That's HOME23, HOME23, to get 15% off your entire first order. That's promo code HOME23 for 15% off. Once again, the website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. And we're going to go around the news here a little bit today. And over the last week or so, since we were last on with you, Mackenzie Holmes was named to the Ann Myers Drysdale USBWA, United States Basketball Writers Association National Player of the Year watch list. Mackenzie Holmes and Sarah Scotty were named to the Women's College All-Star Game player watch list. Unfortunately for our Hoosiers, Ohio State clinches the Big Ten title outright already, even though they still have to go to Iowa City on Sunday. They have clinched the league title at 16-1 with one game to play. The Big Ten tournament in Minneapolis is completely sold out for the tournament up there next week. Congratulations to the Big Ten and to all the women who've made it possible, and the teams who've made it possible for fans who want to come watch at the Big Ten tournament. Terry Morin today was named head coach of the U18 U.S. Junior National Team. Caitlin Clark, late this afternoon, Caitlin Clark announced that she will be foregoing her final season in Iowa City. She could come back next year if she'd wanted to, COVID year, but she announced today she will be declaring for the WNBA. And the Indiana Fever have the #1 draft pick. It is widely assumed that they will use that pick on Caitlin Clark. Would remind our listeners and our audience here in the Workaholics, nothing guaranteed. You could always draft somebody else. You could trade the pick. But it is, again, widely assumed that they will use that pick on Caitlin Clark, and and that will get her as a teammate with our own Grace Berger, as well as Aaliyah Boston, who was the #1 pick last season. The NCAA also tonight at 5:30 Central Time, 6:30 Eastern on ESPN released the top 16 teams or seeds for the NCAA tournament. This is the last time they'll do this before the NCAA bracket reveal on Selection Sunday. 3 Big Ten teams in the top 16. Ohio State #2. Iowa #7. Indiana was #14. Indiana actually moved up a spot from the previous reveal, even though that they'd lost to Illinois. So it does make you wonder a little bit how much they could have possibly moved up had they beat Illinois and Iowa. But again, I think you can make the argument that they may not have played as well against Iowa if they hadn't gotten focused and gotten back into the locker room and got together and pulled together and pulled in the same direction after that loss at Illinois. IU would be in a regional with the following teams. Stanford would be the 1 seed, Texas would be the 2 seed, and North Carolina State would be the 3 seed if all 4 teams advanced to the regional. That regional would actually be in Portland, Oregon. And so again, on seeding line, those 4 teams would be advancing to the regional and the Sweet 16. So we'll look at that part of the news. We're going to give you my initial thoughts about the game on Tuesday. I thought the Hoosiers came out with a really good game plan. They were going to look to get shots when they could get them early. I thought Yarden Garzon was looking to be aggressive. They also were willing to go inside to Mackenzie Holmes, and we're going to talk a lot about Mac a little bit later in the episode. But I thought the game plan was pretty good. I thought Northwestern played pretty well. I thought Northwestern had a decent game plan as well. They got a really great effort from Mulaney Daly. And I think if anybody watched the game on TV, you knew it was Daly's birthday because they remind you of that about 15 times. But she did have a nice game. I thought they stayed with it. I was a little worried about this game, not necessarily from a win-loss perspective, but again, this is a game that you really need to go out and get a good win for the net and for that seed reveal that we didn't know was going to be what was before today. So I thought they played pretty well. They got it through the first half with a 10-point lead, and then they really took over in the third quarter. And in fact, the third quarter was so well played that basically Coach Moore was able to set almost all of her starters the entire fourth quarter. Mackenzie Holmes did not play a single second in the fourth quarter. And when you look at the minutes, the most minutes anybody played was Chloe Moore McNeil with 27. Yarden only played 23 minutes. Sydney Parrish got 25 minutes, but again, trying to work Sydney back in from her injury probably was not a bad thing to get her a couple extra minutes there as well. So I thought the team really did everything they wanted to do. They got a nice win, got out of there, the chance to still, at that point, they still had a chance for the share of the Big Ten title, and then also to come back home for Senior Day. Also, we'll probably should have had this in the news. Senior Day, it was announced. It was announced about a week or so ago too, but we didn't make big mention of it. But right now, the only 3 seniors being honored at Senior Day on Sunday will be Sarah Scalia, Mackenzie Holmes, and Ariel Wisney. Chloe Moore McNeil has not made a decision. This came out again today. It was actually talked about a week or so ago. Chloe Moore McNeil has not made a decision. She's still trying to decide whether she's going to come back and use her COVID year or not, but she is not going through Senior Day. Now, in the past, this has been one of those where if somebody didn't go through Senior Day, that was kind of the signal that they were going to come back pretty definitely. Because if you had if you were on the fence about coming back, then you were, the idea was you'd still go ahead through Senior Day, give your speech, all that. And that way, if you decide not to come back, you at least got that last opportunity in front of the fans. Again, we can't totally read that into what Chloe's thinking, but that's kind of been what's happened in the past. If you go back a couple years ago, Grace Berger waited really almost to the last day to announce that she was coming back for her extra year. Mackenzie Holmes was pretty adamant once she announced it, but she kind of waited until the last moments. And I think part of that maybe also is if you're coming back, you're trying not to steal some of the thunder away from the ones who are going through it, who can't come back. And with those 3. So we'll wait and see if we get an announcement about Chloe tomorrow, Saturday. Again, we're recording this on Thursday evening, Saturday, or maybe sometime Sunday afterwards, after all the festivities. Maybe Chloe will have an announcement or something will be put out by the basketball program. But anyway, so that will be on Sunday as well. We're going to move into some pivotal plays here. And I will say this, watching the game on Tuesday night, there were not a ton of just specific plays that stood out to me. It was more about the way they just played. And if you watched really through the first quarter and the second quarter, Indiana's kind of steadily built the lead. They didn't really jump out, get a huge lead, 15, 20 points, and then Northwestern made a run. They kind of steadily pulled away. At the end of the first quarter, it was 26-21. And then Indiana used a little 7-2 run, jumped out to 33-23 lead in the middle of the second quarter. They led 43-33 at the half, but it was that third quarter where they really were able to sustain a nice run. They did at one point in the third quarter, they went off on I believe it was a 16-0 run that allowed them to push the lead out beyond, to 20 and a little beyond. And then it really just kind of comfortably stayed there. In fact, at one point it got up to as much as 26, I believe. It was 71 to 45 at the end of the third quarter. So it was 26. And then, like I said, we played the bench a ton in the fourth quarter, and I was really happy to see that. And to me, that was, again, not a specific play, but I thought pivotal because you were able to get some of your key players some rest in a game late in the season. Like I said, Mackenzie Holmes didn't play the entire third quarter. Nobody played more than 27 minutes. We got 16 minutes for Lily, 15 minutes for Lene, 15 minutes for Jules. And so I thought that was important. And late in the season, that can be really good because you're saving some legs. And again, they didn't play right away again. They didn't have to turn around and play on Friday or Saturday. They get a little extra rest until Sunday. And then at this point, they're going to be a double bye, so they won't play again until Friday. So right now, I'm really believing that this rest is really going to come in handy. And again, everybody's going to get some rest here before the Big Ten tournament starts. But the fact that players like Mackenzie, players like Sarah, players like Yarden didn't have to run up and down the floor for 34, 35 minutes at Northwestern on a Tuesday night, I think is pivotal. Again, not specific a play, but I think it's pivotal to what was going on. And from that standpoint. So again, and again, I don't have a lot of specific plays that I was going to point out. I just thought that overall it was just a nice, steady progression of how the game was going for the Hoosiers on Tuesday night from that standpoint. So again, you can point out, you look at some of the things. We did not shoot the three well, but we shot the ball. We got to the line, made free throws, shot the ball overall really well. Going back to that third quarter, we were 10 for 14, 71%. So again, you can just see how well the team got locked in, especially coming out of halftime. And I thought that really was where the game was pivotal because you took it basically from a 10-point lead out to 26. So kudos to the ladies on a fine performance in the third quarter from that standpoint with it. So again, don't have a ton of pivotal plays. Let's move on to the notable numbers. And let's start with some of the team macro type numbers. IU outscored Northwestern 46-26 in the paint. They got 11 points off of 9 Northwestern turnovers. And again, that's always a key stat for me as a former coach. Can you get more than a point per turnover? Because that means those are usually live ball turnovers that you're converting, sometimes easily, sometimes it comes into a little more of a, you got to make a couple passes to convert it. But I thought that anytime you're converting one point or more on turnover like that, that's a big thing. And Indiana led that stat 11-6. On second chance points, Indiana was 15-4. All right. And even though IU got scored off the bench 39-23, we got 23 points of production off the bench. So I thought, again, the kids who came in off the bench, Jules, Lene, Lexi Bargesser, Lily Meister especially, really played well and gave us good, solid, quality minutes after a game, especially against Iowa, where that game you really had to rely on the starters quite a bit. They played a lot of minutes. So I thought those were notable numbers in the macro. Obviously, the key number, on another big macro number, Indiana was plus 14 on the glass. And this is a team that earlier in the year, Kathy and I talked a lot about, and really over the last couple of years, that in games where they've struggled, they've had issues rebounding. And there were games earlier this year where even though we may have been even or a little ahead on the rebounding, we were giving up a lot of offensive rebounds. Only gave up 6 offensive rebounds to Northwestern on Tuesday. And again, we're plus 14 overall. And again, this team's rebounding has gotten a lot better since Christmas, at least on the number side. I'm not saying that we can necessarily see it in the film per se, the blockouts are better or anything like that. But what I think is better is the hustle to go after the rebound, especially on the defensive glass. I don't think there's as much standing around and watching as there was, especially prior to Christmas from that standpoint. And so that number of 41-27 in Indiana has been steadily coming up. The numbers in the conference in terms of rebound margin, they started out, they were more in the bottom third of the league when we kind of did the, buy or sell episode earlier in the season, around the Christmas time, New Year's time. And they've steadily moved up now to, kind of middle of the pack. Nationally, their rebound rate and ranking and rebound rate has moved up. So everything about the rebounding has been better for the most part here in the last half of the season. From that standpoint, Indiana shot 53% for the game. They were 7 for 21 from three, only 33%, but they did shoot 13 of 17, 77% at the free throw line. So again, another good night at the free throw line for the Hoosiers. Is again, that number has steadily improved as well. It was another number that earlier when we talked about in the buy or sell episode, where Indiana, I think, was like 12th or 13th maybe when we talked about it in free throw percentage, and they've steadily moved up. Again, they're not in the top 3 or 4, but they've steadily moved up to where it's now respectable, and it's not kind of an Achilles heel as you go deeper into the season from that standpoint. So those are some of the notable numbers I wanted to look at. Indiana did have 14 turnovers. Again, Coach Moore has always talked about 12 kind of being her target, so not far off of that. And this team has been a little above that. This team, it's the one thing I think Coach Moore can't quite get her finger on is why they tend to turn it over 14, 15, 16 times a game. Whereas, in the past, they've been pretty good about being right around that 11 or 12 mark, but they've been able to overcome it. Again, this is a team that's 23-4. We sometimes forget that. We've gotten used to them winning, and so we start kind of nitpicking at some things. I think most teams would be willing to live with the 14 that they're in and battling through. So they also had 17 assists on the 32 made baskets. And a lot of that mainly because when they did get it inside, especially to Mac not necessarily had to work hard, but she had to make a move or two, an up and under, a step one way, come back the other way with the reverse. So may not got counted as an assist because the official scorer would have thought she was making too much of it from herself rather than the direct pass. But again, over half their baskets were assisted on. And that's a number that this group has continuously been pretty good at from that standpoint. So those are some of the numbers I wanted to look at here when we talk about the notable numbers. And we're going to move on into game ball. Game ball here. I see some of you talking in the Workaholics along with Kathy, who has joined us in, and she just wasn't up to feeling to go on the show tonight, but appreciate Kathy being in the Workaholics with us tonight. There's a few players we could talk about here. I mean, I thought, Sarah Scalia didn't shoot the ball particularly well, but I thought she played hard. I thought she was doing what, the things that she should be doing, just wasn't converting on the offensive end. Sydney Parrish, again, 11 points, 10 rebounds with that. So I thought that, Sydney could have been in the discussion. Lily Meister came off the bench in 16 minutes. She had 10 points. From that from there. And when you look at our two post players, Mackenzie Holmes and Lily Meister, just ridiculously efficient on Tuesday night. The two combined for 15 of 17 from the field. I mean, when you're getting that kind of efficiency from your post players, you've got something really good going. But tonight, the game ball, and Kathy and I texted a little bit about this before I went on the air. We were agreeing with this. The game ball here, we're going to go with Mackenzie Holmes on this, and I'll pull up the scroll here at the bottom for those of you who are watching on the YouTube live feed. And you can see that Mackenzie already leads the game ball award with 12 coming into the night. This is going to make number 13 for her. Sarah has 5, Sydney 3, Yarden 3, and Chloe Moore McNeil with 3. But you look at Mackenzie's stat line, 28 points on 12 of 13 shooting, 9 rebounds. She was just shy of a double-double. She had 2 assists, 2 blocks, and a steal, and only committed 1 turnover in the 24 minutes that she played. And again, I've told you before, I like the stat, but I'm honest enough to recognize that it is a flawed stat in some ways. But she was plus 27 in plus minus. So she had an outstanding night on the floor. And I think Mackenzie Holmes was by far going to be our game ball, at least for Kathy and I. And as watching some of you in the workaholics here a little bit, I saw some mentions here for Mac for game ball as well. And from that standpoint, so Mackenzie Holmes will jump up to number 13 on the game ball award, leading for the season, as she gets another game ball tonight. Let's move on to the Grace Berger Hardest Worker Award. And again, for those of you watching on the live YouTube feed, you can see the scroll at the bottom. And this is one that we've had, it's been fun with this award this year because we've had so many different players win it and so many different players in the conversation. Right now, Lexi Bargesser leads with 6, Sydney Parrish with 5, Mackenzie Holmes with 5 as well. Chloe Moore McNeil 4, Sarah Scalia 2, Lene Beaumont 2, Lily Meister and Yarden Garzone with 1 each on the Grace Berger Hardest Worker. And again, I think there's a number of different ways you could have gone here. I saw some of you in the Workaholics talking about Lene and Jules, and especially for Jules. Jules had 8 points on 3 of 5 shooting, 4 rebounds. She did have 2 turnovers, but in 15 minutes, I thought she was very efficient. And I still believe Jules has a very bright future for this Indiana team, this Indiana program. Again, she's been having to play behind some vets and some players who are all Big Ten caliber players. And so it's hard sometimes for her to, A, find the minutes, and B, when she does get minutes, to really get into a rhythm. I thought Lene played okay on Tuesday night. She wasn't at her best. And I think partially, a little bit, she had a big fan section there because she's from Bennett Academy and not far from the Northwestern campus. So I'm sure there was some nerves and wanting to, almost feeling I got to play well. But I thought Lene did some good things. She had 2 rebounds, 2 assists and a steal. From that standpoint, unfortunately, she didn't scratch the scoring column. But Jules, I forgot to say, Jules had 8 points. I can't remember if I said she had the 8 points. But then you looked at somebody, again, I mentioned Sarah Scalia earlier, but this is where I'm going to go with the award tonight. I saw some of you in the Workaholics talking, and Kathy and I were unanimous about this in our text before I went on the show. We're going to go with Sydney Parrish tonight for the Game Ball Award, for the Hardest Worker Award. Because Sydney Parrish coming back, second game back, starting from her injury, and she had 11 points on 4 of 10 shooting. She had 10 rebounds, and I thought that was really where she was active. And she played some really solid defense, but even the rebounds she did get, there were 2 or 3 others that she had a hand on that she kept alive for somebody else to get. So Sydney Parrish had a double-double, 11 points, 10 rebounds. She had 3 assists, and she had a steal in 25 minutes. So Sydney Parrish is going to get our Grace Berger Hardest Worker Award for the Northwestern game, and that's going to bring her up into a tie with 6 with Lexi Bargesser, which is interesting. That Lexi Bargesser and her are tied for the Grace Berger Hardest Worker, which seems how Lexi, kind of got really the benefit of Sid's injury. We don't want anybody to be hurt, but I think Lexi probably benefited the most with the extra playing time and some of the confidence that she's built up. And again, you look at Lexi's numbers on Tuesday night, 2 points, 2 rebounds. She struggled a little bit. She had 4 fouls, but she had 2 assists and a steal. So again, Lexi Bargesser, again, kind of back into that role that we thought she'd play a lot of this year. But you can just also see there's a little bit more confidence in her as she steps out on the floor in those roles. So again, congratulations to Sydney Parrish for winning tonight's Grace Berger Hardest Worker of the game. Also, we will want to keep you updated on some MAC Watch, or what we're referring to as Record Watch now. Mackenzie Holmes, with those 28 points against Northwestern, now has, I find it here, 2,364 points for her career. She trails Calvert Chaney by 148. Now, it's going to take she's got to play well. We're going to have to get a deep run, both in the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament. She probably, counting the Maryland game on Sunday, you're probably figuring about 6 games if we can, 2, maybe 7 if we get 3 games in the Big Ten tournament, the quarterfinal game on Friday, the semi on Saturday, and get to the final on Sunday, and then hopefully make a run into the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8 or farther in the NCAA tournament. But the more games she gets, the more chance there is. Again, still going to take a lot, but she's 148 points behind Calvert Chaney on the all-time list in Indiana scoring. Sarah Scalia On Tuesday, Saraskaya hit 3 threes, bringing her season total to 87. She's 20 shy of Steve Alford's season mark of 107. Which he set back in 1987. Hard to believe that Steve Alford, all the way back in 1987, still has the single season three-point record for the men. And then Saraskaya also had 11 points on Tuesday. That brings her career total to 1,897. She needs 103 points to get to 2,000 for her career. Again, not out of the realm of possibility. You would like to think they will get at least 5 games, and Sarah's quite capable of averaging about 20 points a game over that. So quite realistic for Sarah to get to that 2,000-point mark. And again, that's a combination of points between Minnesota and here. So that updates us on Record Watch. I'll go back to MAC real quick. I forgot to mention these. Kathy would be mad at me if I didn't. She had those 9 rebounds now take her to 965 for her career. She needs 5 more to move into 4th place all time on the rebound list. And the 2 block shots take her up to 248 for her career. She needs 21 blocks to become the all-time leader in block shots. And again, hard to tell per se, but again, with about maybe 6-7 games that she might get in, she's going to have to average about 3 blocks a game. Again, not out of the possibility, but again, she's only been basically averaging about 1.5 for the season this year. So again, it's just one of those that it was a long way for her to go to get there to begin with. So that's our Record Watch tonight for Mac and Sarah. And then also want to remind you about the next game we'll be back here for is Sunday, and hopefully Kathy will be feeling better. It was a little harder than I thought it would be, Kathy, to try and be producer and host. The Hoosiers will be in action on Sunday. They will host Maryland for Senior Day at Simon Scott Assembly Hall. That game is at 3 Eastern, 2 Central. All the Big Ten teams are playing on Sunday. And I really want to say I like what the Big Ten's done here. Because especially when you consider if it really was coming down to the last day for the Big Ten title, but there's also seeding involved. There's a lot of movement outside of the top 3, and even Indiana's involved in this a little bit. We'll get into this in a second. But I like how the Big Ten's doing this. They're basically everybody's playing on the same day and near enough the same times. It's going to be really hard to kind of manipulate where you want to try and finish and how you do with this. Now, the one question I do have a little bit is Ohio State is clinched. Will they play their top players the entire game going for the win at Iowa, or will they kind of see how it goes? And if they get behind in the second half, will they try to rest them a little bit, knowing they have the number 1 seed clinched from that standpoint? So it'll be interesting to see. Anyway, back to the IU game with Maryland. Maryland, that game is on Peacock. The Terrapins defeated Wisconsin tonight, so they improved to 8-9 in the Big Ten. 9-8. Sorry, I was reading it wrong. 9-8 in the Big Ten. And 17-11 overall. Charlie Cream currently has them as an 11 seed, one of the last 4 in for Maryland before tonight. His new bracket reveal will be probably tomorrow morning around 9 o'clock Eastern. Brenda Freese is the head coach for Maryland. They're led by 3 players in double figures. Cheyenne Sellers at 15.4 per game. She's 8th in the league. 6 rebounds a game and 5.4 assists per game, which puts her 5th. Cheyenne Sellers definitely an all-league caliber player for the Terrapins. Ja'Kiah Brown-Turner averages 13.6 a game, 6.1 rebounds, and 1.7 assists. And Bree McDaniel averages 12.9 points per game, 3.8 rebounds per game, and 3 assists per game for that. For the Terrapins. On the team stats, Maryland averages just under 79 points a game, which is 6th in the league, but they're giving up 73.6. They're giving up almost 74 a game. That's 13th in the league. It's been the one thing that has been kind of a head scratcher with this Maryland team, who's been known for being a pretty solid defensive team over the years, and how they just really struggled to stop some teams from scoring. We hope this continues on Sunday. But again, then they're about middle of the pack and some other things. They're seventh in field goal percentage at just under 45%. They hold their opponents to at 44%, which is sixth in the league. They make 36% of the three-point field goals, which is fifth in the league. They hold their opponents to 30% three-point field goal percentage, which is fifth. They shoot 77% at the line, which is fifth. And they're plus 1.9 in rebounding, which is eighth in the league. And they're plus 1.4 on turnover margin, which is seventh. So you look at some of these stats and you're trying to figure out, how is Maryland giving up 73, almost 74 points a game that ranks 13th in the league? Because you look at those stats and they're middle of the pack from that standpoint. But it is, you can't, the numbers are what they are. When you're 17 games, the stats are based on 16 games. You're 16 games into the Big Ten season and you are 29 games into your total season. The numbers are not lying. As we often joke in basketball, especially coaching, ball doesn't lie. At this point, the stats don't lie really. There may be some anomalies, maybe some outliers, but not much is going to happen that should totally surprise you at this point. On the Her Hoop Stats website, they have IU rated 9th in the country. Maryland's 27th, which is actually a little above their net ranking. It's way above where Charlie Cream would have them in the bracketology. So it'll be very interesting to see if Maryland makes the tournament, where the committee has them slotted. Offensive efficiency, IU 7th, Maryland's 45th. In defensive efficiency, IU is 135th. Maryland's 263rd, goes back to what we were just talking about. On effective field goal percentage, IU is second, 59%. Maryland is 78th at 49.2%. On points per possession, IU is second at 1.02. Maryland is 51st, 0.88. Rebound rate, Indiana's 57th. Now, this may be the one place where Maryland, and we talked about positive rebounding margin, but they're 129th in rebound rate. So again, maybe they're giving up a lot of second and third chances on offensive rebounds. IU's 14th in assists per game. Maryland's 34. So again, record-wise, you're kind of looking at this like, oh, Indiana is a favorite, and they will be, but can they sustain it, or not sustain it? But this game could very well be closer than we think it would be on paper when you look at some of the numbers and crunch them a little bit. So as we go around the Big Ten, kind of as we head into the last weekend, yesterday, again, we said this earlier, Ohio State defeated Michigan in Columbus 67-51 to clinch the outright Big Ten title. Iowa went up to Minnesota and won by a 108-60 score. Penn State went on the road to West Lafayette and beat Purdue 93-88 at Mackey. And then tonight, Maryland won 79-63, as I mentioned already. Illinois and Michigan State are playing right now. Again, that game has some seeding implications because Michigan State battling for that 4th spot to be in the double bye. On Sunday, these are what I think are the key games, not necessarily because they're great games, but because they hold seeding implications. Ohio State will be at Iowa. That's the first game of the day. That game is on Fox. So if you're interested in watching and tuning in before the IU game starts. Minnesota goes to Penn State. Now, Minnesota's struggling, and Minnesota is a hard luck's tale. Mara Braun getting hurt just absolutely devastated them because this was a team of Mara Braun that was probably going to be on the bubble for an NCAA tournament and be in that mix for being a number 6, 7 team, maybe an 8 team in the Big Ten. But with the loss of Mara Braun, they've really struggled to kind of put wins together. But again, Penn State had struggled before they went the last 2-3 games before they went into Purdue on last night and won. But again, if Penn State can win, they got a chance to get a decent seed in the Big Ten tournament. Plus, definitely would get them at least a first round bye. Excuse me. Nebraska at Illinois. This is huge. Illinois is capable, as we saw a couple weeks ago when they beat Indiana in Champaign. Nebraska right now is holding on to the 4 seed. They pretty much got to win. I don't know all the tie-breaking procedures, but if I'm Nebraska, you got to win to hold on to that number 4 and get the double bye. Michigan State goes to Wisconsin. Wisconsin's playing better. I'm not sure they got enough to beat Michigan State. But if Michigan State goes in there a little lackadaisical, they might get themselves in trouble. And again, Michigan State has to win and then go for the tie-breaking procedures because right now they're trailing at least in going into the night, they're a half game behind Nebraska. So again, it's kind of a must win for both teams if they want that number 4 seed. And even then, again, I don't know the tie breaking procedures, so they may very well, how that shapes out. But right now, must wins if they want to be in that double bye. And then Purdue will go to Michigan, and Michigan right now at 8-9. Again, get to 9-9. And again, depending on some tiebreakers, they could find themselves in maybe a 6 seed from that standpoint, or a loss that sends them to 8-10 might knock them down to like an 8 or a 9 seed. And with that, so again, a lot of seeding implications in these games on Sunday. They not necessarily be marquee games, but in terms of the Big Ten tournament seeding, they'll be big. Again, go through the process here real quick. IU and Iowa, if they end up tied, which means Iowa would beat Ohio State on Sunday, Iowa has the tiebreaker. The tiebreaker would basically come down to how they did against Ohio State. And Indiana lost their only matchup. They would be considered 0-1. And if Iowa can beat Ohio State, they would be 1-1. So they would get the tiebreaker and be the 3 seed. If IU would be the 3 seed, Iowa would be the 2. If Ohio State goes into Iowa City and beats Iowa on what's going to be Caitlin Clark's senior day, that place is going to be absolutely nuts. So they're really going to be running into a buzzsaw there from that standpoint. So, but if Ohio State can win, then Indiana's the 2 seed no matter what, because they'll be 1 game up on Iowa. But right now the tiebreaker goes to the Hawkeyes if they end up tied. So as the Big Ten standings as of earlier tonight, kind of the top 7, 8 that we were looking at, Ohio State, we mentioned, is all the way up to 16-1. Indiana's 13-3. Iowa's 13-3. Nebraska is 11-6. Michigan State playing tonight. So right now, and I'm not being able to keep up with that score, they're 10-6 coming in tonight. Maryland's 9-8. Michigan's 8-9. Penn State 8-9. Those are the teams we're kind of keeping an eye on. Again, in the Big Ten tournament, anybody's dangerous, but right now you're kind of looking at if Indiana holds on to that. Right now, they'd be the 3 seed, so you're looking possibly at Maryland again on Friday if the seeds hold on. But again, things may change based on tiebreakers, so that's why we'll know more on Sunday by the time Kathy and I are on with the postgame show. With that, so. Trying to find my stuff here. And I've been talking to you guys for about 40 minutes. You're probably getting tired of me at this point. But some final thoughts, again, not just the season, but this game coming up, a huge game. You want to finish the season strong. You want to get a win on senior day. I mean, for every coach, every fan, you want to see your seniors go out on senior day with a win. Mackenzie Holmes, Sarah Scalia, Ariel Wisney, those 3, you want to send them out in the right way, because you don't know for sure you'll get back to play a game. Again, we hope they'll be hosting, hope everything works out where they'll be a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament and they'll host. Right now, Charlie Cream, the seed would have them as a 4 seed. The seed revealed tonight had them as a 4 seed. They would host. Charlie Cream has had them there as a 4 seed over the last couple reveals since the Iowa game, with them hosting. And then Syracuse would be the 5 seed in that pod. Who they've been playing has changed a couple different times, but that would be the 5 seed would be Syracuse out of the ACC, coached by former Indiana coach Felicia Leggett-Jack. So there is a little bit of backstory with that. And I wonder if there's a little bit, if Cream thinks that he thinks the NCAA will try and get kind of a matchup like that with IU and Syracuse based on that history there with Felicia Leggett-Jack having been at IU earlier before Terry. In fact, it was there before Kurt Miller, and then Kurt Miller left and Terry Morin came in. So a couple coaches ago. But final thoughts, I thought the Hoosiers played well on Tuesday against Northwestern. You did exactly everything they knew. Now they got to come in on Sunday, take care of business, get a nice win. And a nice win for me is any win. I don't get too much into margins of victory. I know the net does, but I'm not looking too much at margin of victory here. I just want to make sure we get a win, because that way you get to 15-3. I think I said IU's 13-3 earlier IU and I were both 14-3 in the league at this point. I messed up. I was misreading my notes, but you want to get to 15-3 in the league. and you also just want to keep playing well and keeping improving as the season goes along. And again, Terry Moore often talks about process. She talks about getting better every day. She talks obviously about do the work. And that's what this game comes down to. You just got to do the work and get out there with a W, get everybody out healthy. We don't want anybody injured, but get out there healthy and move on to the Big Ten tournament next week in Minneapolis, where you'll definitely won't be playing until Friday in the Big Ten tournament. Okay, so coming up, our upcoming schedule, we will be back. Kathy will be back with me on Sunday afternoon, immediately after the Maryland game. The show time is 5 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Central, roughly. The game, again, starts at 3 Eastern, 2 Central, so we're figuring about a couple hours for the game. Assembly Call Radio will be coming on right up after me, pretty much, here tonight at 9 Eastern, 8 Central. And the men are also playing on Sunday at Maryland. So so we'll have, a couple shows on Sunday, it looks like, for our fans. But the men play about an hour ahead of time. So I don't think we're going to have any issues with scheduling. But if we do, we'll let you know. Watch our Twitter feed. Watch our Substack feed on assemblycall.com. Speaking of which, if you want to see us do the show live and be a part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ that's the @ symbol, Back Home Network, youtube.com / Back Home Network. You can also, like you mentioned, you can follow us on Twitter or X, search Doing the Work, and we should come up in your first hit. You can follow us there at Doing the Work or DTW IUWBB on Twitter, or X formerly known as Twitter. I still have a hard time with that. You can also, again, and you can be a part of our private community as well. Find out more about that at assemblycall.substack.com. Special thanks to John Ringer of Riggs Design for designing our logos. Also, a big thank you to Bob Thompson for our music that you heard throughout the broadcast. I want to thank all of you for listening and being there and being supportive this evening as I did this solo. Kathy, you're not feeling well. Kathy, I hope you're feeling better. We'll get Kathy back in here on Sunday. And thank you for listening. Until we talk to you on Sunday, keep your elbows in, your eyes on the rim, and let's go Hoosiers. And that's a wrap. I'm sold by Kathy in the chat that Michigan State up big on Illinois, 56-24, and assuming they hold on to that, they'll move up to 11-6 as well, tied Nebraska for that 4 seed. So again, a lot of important games on Sunday that will really shake out and will be very important in the path that IU has for winning a Big Ten title and in Minneapolis next week. So again, I want to thank everybody who, with their kind words. Obviously, Kathy, appreciate you being in here in the chat and watching along, even though you didn't feel up to joining the show. I totally understand. I've been there before, but again, thank you for your kind comments. I hope I didn't bore you to death. Hope I didn't ramble too much, but it was fun. But I missed my co-host, my co-pilot here tonight. So hopefully she'll be feeling better by Sunday. Until then, we'll talk to you all, and everybody have a great evening.